welcome to Best Media Info. I am Akanksha Shrivastava and we are here at Cannes Lion International Festival of Creativity. Today I have with me Sir Martin Sorrell, and generally, like before this interview, I was thinking how to introduce him.
But I just stop there. We're fine. We've introduced. Now we get on with it.
Yes, without beating around the bush, let me just get to the questions quickly. So for Sir Martin Sorrell, Cannes means business and bigger business. So how has been your experience here as S4 Capital Chief, and what key learnings are you thinking to take away from here?
Well, we've only just started. We're a day and a half in. There's another 3.5 to go. Although most people seem to do it from Tuesday to Thursday, which is a pity. I mean, I think the biggest thing is the balance between technology and creative. I mean, Cannes used to be a totally creative festival. It was started, I think, by a bunch of French creatives who thought they'd sit around in Cannes in the midst of the summer talking about French creativity, because it's mushroomed enormously. And then it's shifted much more towards tech. If you walk down the Croisette, the main street here, and the beaches and the booths are dominated by the tech companies, and those are the people who are making the biggest investments.
Yeah.
In terms of facilities. The Palais is surrounded by tech as well. So I think it's this balance between tech and creative, and then allied to that, obviously, with AI becoming more and more front and center in people's minds and thoughts. How do you balance the technology versus the creativity, and whether there's a need for a balance? My own view is technology and data. Data was the forerunner of technology in a sense. They're not the enemy of creativity, they're the friend, and they can stimulate. And with data, you get greater insights. With AI, I think you get better work quicker, and the quality can be improved by the technology. It's not a question of losing quality. So our tagline, go to market, is faster, better, cheaper, and more. And I think that's what we're seeing from a technology point of view and the impact on our industry. So I guess some people see it as a clash between technology and creativity. I think they complement one another.
Mm-hmm. So you think that industry is going towards the better? I mean, balancing nicely between technology and...
Well, there will be bumps. I mean, there was a lot of discussion as to whether technology will increase the number of jobs, reduce it. My own view is probably be a net reduction, but that will apply mainly across the board. There will be, I think, healthcare will get a tremendous boost from AI, for example. But it's going to be difficult. In our industry, we see 5 areas where AI is already impacting. One is visualization and copywriting, speed to market. Second is hyper-personalization, so personalizing ads at great scale. Third is on media planning and buying. Fourth is general efficiency, like an initiative we have within video on outside broadcasting. And then finally, spreading knowledge inside the organization, democratizing knowledge. So each of those affects employment and employment opportunities in different ways. But net, if you push me, I think AI will reduce the number of jobs. I think we were talking about this earlier. Sam Altman said something like 95% of the jobs will go in advertising. I think he was exaggerating to make the point, but I think he's right in some senses that there are going to be areas of the industry where jobs...
So what should people do to retain their jobs then?
Well, one of the things is they have to reskill. I mean, if you said to me, what should people do when they leave school, I would have said learn code. You probably don't have to learn code anymore because you can pick that up through ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. I would have said learn Chinese, but maybe you don't even have to learn Chinese anymore because AI can do it for you. And then the other thing would be learn Spanish. And so that's gone. So those skills can be accelerated by the technology. But what I'm getting at is I think the parts of the world, obviously technology plays a huge role. The rise of China will continue unchecked, as will the rise of India. under Modi, under Prime Minister Modi for the third time and beyond, I would argue. Huge. I still remain a raging bull on India. But also the languages, China obviously would be important from a language point of view. And Latin America, actually, which is the Spanish part, although Latin America is also Portuguese with Brazil. So I think those points still remain in an AI world. I mean,
so you did not answer my question about how can people retain their jobs.
Well, by learning different skills. That's the answer to your question.
But almost every skill can be done by AI, except the...
No, that's no. But when you learn a language, you learn what people think and how they think, how they go about things. You learn about their culture, their approach. The world is going to be a much more fragmented world. And parts of the world, I was in Brazil last week, and what struck me was, the global south, of which India is included, certainly by virtue of the people who talk about the global south. They also include Russia, which I wouldn't include in it, but they do. The global south certainly has a very different view of its role in the future than it has been the role in the past. And the G7, if you take out of the G7 the US, and you take out China out of the E7, the emerging markets, so-called, the G6 will still be less than the E6, and even the E7 is bigger than the G7 from a GDP point of view. So the world is changing. So the answer to your question is you have to have different skills and different thinking about what you're doing and how you do it.
So it has been like good 7 years since the world is hearing from you about creating an agency business that competes with big consulting firms.
It's actually 6 years, but never mind. Go.
Okay, 6 years, my bad.
Yeah.
And this has been done specially to correct the pricing and margins. So was 7 years not enough for turning S4 Capital into one such company?
Well, it's been 6 years, as I said. No, I think we're still in the process. I mean, the basic principles surrounding S4 and its operating brand Media Monks were 4, and they are even more relevant today. The first one was digital only, because that's where the growth is. So this year, digital will be probably 700 billion out of a trillion. So 70% of the market will be digital, the other 30% being linear. Go back to 2020 or even 2000, digital really didn't exist. So within 25 years, digital now represents 70% of the world's media market. So that's one. Secondly, we said data-driven, because that's where we get the insights from. In a circular way, informs the technology, improves the technology. That, with AI, is even more important, because the fuel of AI is data. The third was we go to market as faster, better, cheaper. And we've added and more to that because of AI, because we can create more. And we often debate whether we should include the word cheaper. And in fact, some of the people who try and use the same phrase, they talk about faster, better, more efficient, or better quality, or whatever. We think AI, one of the benefits of AI is efficiency. So actually promoting that and positioning as such makes sense. And the fourth point is a unitary brand. We think the era of multiple brands, or the structure of multiple brands, is not as effective or efficient as a unitary brand. McKinsey had done some work on that. They were particularly focused on Microsoft and what Satya Nadella has done at Microsoft in building one Microsoft. And we think that's the way to go. They came up with a typical McKinsey answer to it. They said companies were 24% more effective if they were unitary. But those 4 principles, so digital only, data driven, faster, better, cheaper, and more, and unitary, I think are even stronger today than they were when we started 6 years ago.
So is it right to say that S4 Capital is in good position to compete with the big
yes,
tech?
well, compete with the
consulting big tech.
Well, you say, I mean, they're not our only competitors. I mean, and when you say consulting companies, I think you have to distinguish between what I would call the implementational consultancies, like an Accenture, rather than the strategics. And when we talk about the consulting companies, we talk about the implementational from a technology point of view. That would be an Accenture. That would be, it would be EPAM, Endava, Proficient, CI&T, Globant, not the consultancies in the classic sense of the word. Some of the auditing firms, which are also have consulting operations, like a PwC or a Deloitte, have digital arms as well, and we could compete there. But so you could call them consultancies. But essentially, it's Accenture is where a lot of our competition comes from. And then with the holding companies at a different level, it tends to be the digital pieces of it. So it might be an AKQA at WPP or a VML in its purest sense, and AKQA too, not with Grey and not with the other things that have been tacked on to and merged into VML, but the pure digital businesses.
Do you see holding companies also in a good position to compete with the...
Well, I think they're going to have difficulty because the problem the holding companies have is that still 60-70% of their business is linear. Parts of the business which are not...
Dentsu is positioning itself as a marketing and tech. Dentsu is positioning itself as a marketing and tech company now.
Yes, but what they say and what they do and what they are two different things. I mean, Dentsu, you quote Dentsu, is probably one of the worst performing of the holding companies.
So how much of S4 Capital's business is lean?
I don't think, drawing that, Publicis is probably, from a holding company point of view, have positioned itself and implemented most effectively. I mean, because they have a good leader, they have a good data and digital story. They also do proprietary media buying, which helps their margins. And we were discussing it with a group of investors. They also probably have a strong US presence, which helps. And they've created one internal platform, control platform. As one analyst said, every road goes through Paris. So they're very centralized.
Okay. Today, even Havas announced 400 million euros.
Yeah, but I don't know what that means. I mean, that's just a soundbite for you, and you've obviously picked it up. But what does it mean? Did you ask them? Did they were talking about capital?
They're investing that money into AI, data, and tech.
In what?
Building their capabilities.
No, that's not what they said. They said they're investing 400 million, but they haven't said whether it's capex. They haven't said it's opex. They haven't said whether it's part of their existing salaries. There was no detail. It was just a bold statement that they were going to invest X amount. Everybody has said that.
I think they're investing in partnerships with the relevant people.
In what?
In partnerships with the relevant...
So which partners?
So there were a long list of partners.
No, I think it was a very woolly statement. I think it was not meaningful, let me put it like that.
They said data, AI, tech, they're making...
Yeah, but what does that mean?
So they did mention...
What? What are they going to actually invest in? Yeah, we have.
They're doing partnerships. They're building capabilities in-house. They're acquiring companies.
Everybody has partnerships with people. They're doing a partnership with Google, with Meta. I mean, it's nonsense. No, it's meaningless.
So then, please tell me about S4 Capital's investment.
So we've invested, through MediaMonks, obviously. We've invested in 10 platforms, which are to do with research. In terms of copywriting and visualization, in media planning and buying. And there's 10 sets of things that we're doing, all related to AI and implementation of AI. I mean, we had one of the leading analysts and consultants around here today saying that he had looked at all the offers from the holding companies, etc. There were promotional videos, but very little actual looking at our product set, that we had identified 10 platforms or 10 areas which were workflow employing AI for implementation. I mean, we've seen and this is where it gets very specific. It's not airy-fairy, we're going to spend X on Y and not give any detail. First, visualization copywriting. Second, personalization at scale. Thirdly, media planning and buying. Fourthly, general efficiency, agency and client. And fifthly, spreading knowledge through the firm. So these are specific executions. The problem in the market at the moment is that clients are not willing yet to jump in with both feet. Certainly NVIDIA are building the capacity in terms of data centers and chip capacity. But even they are very focused on developing use cases in those areas I just mentioned, and with those 10 platforms that we have. So you're getting workshops, you're getting audits, but people are not jumping in with feet. I think what's going to happen is that we will start to see very shortly major advertisers taking a very different approach to how they develop their advertising and content. And the FOMO effect will then kick in, the fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. So what you need is some first movers from specific case studies. That hasn't happened as yet. I mean, we do have significant audits and workshops, and that has gone into one or two, I would say, small to medium-sized transformation programs, but nothing huge. But that's going to come, I think, pretty shortly.
Mm-hmm. So you did mention in the interview about the word cheaper in the tagline, if I'm not mistaken. Is it good to offer services at a cheaper cost?
Yes, because I think with AI, one of the advantages of AI is that it will make things more efficient and cost less. And I think that's,
and what about margins?
In a world that is growing more slowly. Mm-hmm. We've lived in a golden era of high growth, low inflation, low interest rates, where the world is going to grow slower, where inflation is going to be higher and interest rates are going to be higher. It's going to be more difficult to grow, and therefore efficiency.
Today only I attended a session in which the speakers talked about not to offer creative services at a cheaper cost, and agencies have set a wrong precedence, and that's where they moved out of there.
Yes, but that looks at it from the point of view of the agency, not the client. And who pays the bill?
Client.
Who pays the bill? Okay, it's the agency doesn't pay the bill. No, the client does. So the client wants, whether we like it or not, they want better work more efficiently. And I think in a lot of the presentations that we make on AI, we say that we reckon you can improve your efficiency by at least 30%. I don't think that's, we had a big debate about it. Mm-hmm. And you're right in the sense that there are agencies who try and use the same copy line, the same go-to-market line, and they don't like the idea of using cheaper for that reason. But I think they're wrong.
Pricing and margins continue to shrink year on year in agency business, even as the clients continue to multiply the market valuations. So what will it take for a course correction in the prevailing situation?
Well, you've got to create more value. Part of the problem for the agencies in that visualization of copywriting, in speed to market is a two-edged sword, because if you're selling time and it takes less time, you get less revenue. So in the second area, which is the hyper-personalization, you switch the outputs from time to assets. Now, it's true that with AI, the cost per asset will fall, but the number of assets you'll be able to produce multiplies several-fold. So price times quantity will be greater than the previous amount. So in that environment, there'll be more opportunity. I mean, it's what I call Netflix on steroids, the model, which is a model which you develop an insight. Your consumers have certain likes and dislikes. They might like cricket, they might like business, whatever it is. You tailor content to their likes, see how they respond, and in an iterative circular process, you discover what turns them on, what motivates them to do more.
Okay, so when it comes to pricing and margin challenges, India is no different from other markets. In fact, it received the same treatment when S4 decided to reboot its operations. So how different is your overview of India market as a chief of S4 Capital?
It's the same. I mean, India is what I referred to before. I think India, I think Prime Minister Modi has done the right thing in that he tries if I can put it crudely, both ends off against the middle, which is for India and for the Indian people, tries to get the very best deal for India from wherever the help, aid might come from. So I think balancing that is really important. You see that with South America as well. Most South American countries look to America and or to China and balance the two. But the world is going to be a very different place. I mean, countries such as India, which is the world's most populous country now, and which will be one of the top 5 nations in 2050, probably the 3rd largest in terms of GDP, after China and then the US, with Indonesia 4th and Germany 5th, or the other way around, 5th, Germany 4th and Indonesia 5th. So 3 of the top 5 countries will be Asian. And therefore India, I think, has a huge role to play in future economic development. So, I mean, one independent agency I saw recently said to me, should we maintain our presence in India? And I said, you most definitely should, because I think India is a country which has done extremely well.
Which agency is this? Which agency?
None of your business. That would be breaking confidential. But really interesting agency, and they were asking whether they should continue. And they obviously should, because I think the world, is fragmenting from a geographical point of view. And therefore, North and South America, the Middle East, and Asia are the opportunities. India benefits from the questions around China and Taiwan. And if you're big in China, you probably want to you sort of hedge your bets by becoming bigger in India or by becoming bigger in Latin America. When Apple or Tesla has problems with supply chain in China or gets to 15-20% of sales as they think about alternatives such as India or indeed Mexico.
Because you've talked about growth in India, I have one question about ADEX to GDP ratio. So while probably in the leading markets, the ADEX to GDP ratio is like 0.66% to 1%. In India, it's not changed, and it's constantly been like, even if it's been increasing, it's like 0.32% to GDP, the ADEX ratio. So how can holding companies help push a better GDP to ADEX ratio?
Well, we're not a holding company, so to be quite clear, so it's just a different model. I don't know about the holding companies, but generally, as India develops further, as distribution develops further, digital distribution, etc., advertising will become more and more important. I mean, that's one of the big opportunities. And the growth of digital advertising, I think, will drive the proportion of ad spending as a proportion of GDP, which you're getting at, will increase it. Because it has always been historically low. You've seen in China it grow significantly. It will grow in India as distribution becomes more sophisticated and as digital takes hold.
So do you think in India, agencies sell their services for lesser in comparison to other countries?
Well, I mean, obviously in time, labor costs are lower, but that is changing. I mean, some of the hubs are not necessarily, the automatic answer to a hub is not necessarily India anymore. For example, Buenos Aires in Argentina, Brazil, maybe a little bit more expensive, Colombia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines. There are hubs that you can build in many countries now. But that is certainly a question of time. As the economy develops and the ad spending ratios, the ADEX ratios, as you mentioned, will increase.
And how much weight does India have in the S4 scheme of things? Because
it's really important. Our geographical balance is not where I want to see it. We're currently about 70% North and South America, about 20% EMEA, and 10% in Asia, and which obviously India is an important part. And I'd like to see it at least 20%. So I'd like to see it at least double from where it is now.
In how much time?
Sorry? Well, I wouldn't put, everybody says, you should give a target, but not with a time, or give a time without a target. in the next few years, I really want to see. I mean, the business is growing rapidly there. We've had some issues to deal with, but it still continues to grow. And the management.
What are those issues, if you can tell?
Well,
it's none of my business.
No, it's public. What we've done there.
What are you doing about it?
We've changed the management there. And we built it.
So how is the management currently like in India?
It's good. I mean, with Matt running the region, Matt Godfrey, and Robbie Godino running India, so it's working well.
So last year at Cannes, the discussions were about how AI is growing, and this year, what I'm seeing the change in conversation is about balancing between human and AI, human intervention.
No, I think that's always been. I don't think that's new. That balance between, will AI replace jobs or complement jobs has been a discussion right from the very beginning. I think this year, the real issue is the speed with which it's implemented. Because there's a lot of talk about it, going back to your, yes, we'll spend money on it. That's not the issue. The issue is the capacity is being built or being built. And how will it be used? How will that capacity be used? What will be the areas? Where's the beef? Is really the issue. And as I said to you, one of the analysts was telling us that he's seen all the offers from the agencies here, and we're a rare exception in that we have an offer which is practical and implementable immediately. With the 10 platforms that we have around months flow, and this is a way of speeding to market and implementation. And the trouble is, there's a lot of talk and very little specific. It comes back to use cases. I think the biggest use case is going to be hyper-personalization at scale. I think you're going to see major advertisers make major changes to the way they develop their strategic creative, and they implement it through content factories, which are either run by us or run by them.
Okay, so one last question that I have is, you've been for so long in the industry, probably you are the torchbearer, you expanded the industry. So what is that one mistake that you think that you shouldn't have done, and one thing that changed the game completely for you?
Obviously over-leveraged when we acquired Ogilvy, or merged Ogilvy and acquired it in 1989, took on too much debt. So, we took convertible preferred stock. So that was I forgot that when markets come down, the convertible preferred can't be converted or won't be converted. So I would say that is the one public mistake or one of the public mistakes that I admit to. In terms of game changers, I think actually it's interesting. When we developed WPP, the game changer was uniting companies that people were somewhat critical. Journalists would be critical, or people in the industry be critical of a JWT, of an Ogilvy, of a Y&R or Gray. But what they have is they are brands that people have been built over time. And I think it's all too easy to jettison brand and reputation. And I think what's really important to understand is we have very powerful franchises. And despite what people do to them, they survive and they prosper. And I think sometimes we forget that. So I think the strength of the brand, the thing that I think is really interesting is the strength of our brands. It reminds me a little bit of what you see. There was a documentary done about Bernard Arnault and Henry Pinault and their battle for Gucci. And what it tells you about Tom Ford and Alexander McQueen and it tells you, and Galliano, it tells you that the brand is more important than the creative director in that sense. The brand survives, and I think that's what they understand. Despite Chanel, Karl Lagerfeld, he dies sadly, but Chanel is a brand that keeps on going forever. So the power, agencies are great franchises. Don't think people would fully understand that. So I think that was a game changer.
Is this something that you wish to tell our audience, and I haven't included that question?
No, I just think I don't think so. I think remember, I think the world is going to be a very different place, and you have to think about geography, and where you plant your flag is very important. And so I think the Indian population have a huge opportunity over the next 50 years. That's one thing. The second thing is technology is not our enemy, and implementing it can be extremely effective. Europe, I didn't mention Europe in terms of growth areas deliberately, because Europe, many of our clients, if not all, see Europe as a cost base or an opportunity for cost reduction, not growth, whereas they see India as an opportunity for growth, revenue growth. And that's a big difference. So AI is going to be really important, along with blockchain, quantum computing, and the metaverse, much maligned metaverse, in making Europe more efficient, and indeed India as well more efficient. But the great opportunity in India is the revenue opportunity.
I hope there is a profit margin opportunity as well.
Well, yes, you say that, but I mean, Indian companies, the irony of what we just said is, I was reading articles about companies IPOing their Indian subsidiaries. I mean, Unilever is a good example of a company. Unilever in India, Hindustan Unilever, is far more highly valued in a multiple basis than Unilever on the stock exchange here in Europe. And in fact, there was one, I think, Japanese company that, I think it was Japanese, listed its subsidiary, raised money, billion or 2 billion, whatever it is, took the money to buy back stock in the parent company in order to try and boost. The arbitrage will even out over time. I mean, on that basis, you probably should short the Indian stocks and buy the parents. But it's interesting that the valuations, Nestle, Unilever, their subsidiaries which are listed in India, are far more highly valued than the mainstream companies in the Swiss exchange or wherever. So people what's the reason for that? Well, part of it is illiquidity and scale. But it's also because people see the prospects in the Indian market. I'll buy a piece of India as opposed to buying, and we used to say the same thing about China, because the Chinese markets have come off, although I think China's an opportunity too from the stock market point of view.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the wonderful insights.
Thank you.